Hello, 21st of July. We're looking at Bitcoin. A couple of weeks ago, we made this forecast where Bitcoin was supposed to rally towards 7,500, probably hit its head on a lot of resistance around that zone, and turn back down for another couple of months. So far, price agrees with that forecast, and the price has reached some critical levels. So let's have a look at more details, what might happen to Bitcoin over the next several days and weeks. Remember, nobody knows for certain what's going to happen to any asset. This is based on probabilities. This is just showing us which price path is more likely and which one is less likely. So, what do we see on the chart? Firstly, Bitcoin has reached the 100-day moving average over the last several days. It has bumped its head on the 100-day moving average. It did peak slightly above that, although it didn't close above the 100-day moving average. This moving average might turn to be one of the resistance zones close to this 7,500 area. Another possible resistance zone is the lower border of the pennant formation that Bitcoin has been in since February. Back in early June, Bitcoin broke out below the pennant formation, and very often after a breakout, either below or above a formation, a retrace is common. Very often such a retrace just tags this formation and continues in the direction of the original breakout. So that also adds more towards the probability that relatively soon Bitcoin might turn back down. What else do we see? RSI here is not overbought yet, but the 14-day RSI is pretty close to overbought. What might happen is something similar to what happened to Bitcoin over the previous cycle that lasted for nearly 3 months, although usually they last for about a couple of months. What happened then is, after RSI has tagged the overbought levels, price actually made slightly higher high and RSI showed some divergence. So we might see something similar in this case, where price moves a little bit higher over the next week or so. And if RSI shows us some divergence, that will be an additional indicator of a more likely decline in Bitcoin price. Moving on to the general duration of these Bitcoin cycles, that is about 2-3 months. In a bear market, generally these cycles start with an advancing phase that lasts for less than half of the cycle duration. So if cycle lasts for about 2 to 3 months, an advancing phase rallies for, well, a month is very likely. And looks like the cycle low was somewhere here at the end of June. If the rally continues for about a month, then somewhere by August we might see the cycle top, and after that Bitcoin might turn back down. What if, as we saw in the middle of July, there are a couple of big green arrows on the Bitcoin price? What is that going to imply? Even if Bitcoin breaks convincingly above the 100-day moving average, there is a lot of resistance beyond that. For example, the 200-day moving average is at about 8,700, and even between the 100-day and 200-day moving average, there are multiple resistance levels. One way of trying to identify those is looking at these turning points, more or less significant ones. So at 9,100, there is a resistance zone. There is another one slightly above that. Of course, there is the recent high at about 10,000. So even breaking convincingly above 100-day moving average might not mean anything significant beyond that, as there are still a lot of resistance levels that Bitcoin would meet on its way up. Let's have a look at Fibonacci numbers. How much of this recent decline from early May to late June is Bitcoin likely to retrace on its way up? Well, very often 50% or 62% retracement is what happens, and 50% retracement is at 8,000, whereas 62% retracement is close to 8,400. Those just add more resistance lines on the way up for Bitcoin. And lastly, instead of following this pennant formation since early February, Bitcoin might actually be following this descending triangle formation, which often is a bearish formation as opposed to ascending triangle. That gives us another possible target for Bitcoin to hit this upper border of the descending triangle, which is at about 8,100. In summary, taking into account all that we've looked at, I think Bitcoin still might continue moving up for, say, about a week or so, maybe a couple of weeks, but I don't see any explosive moves, say, beyond 9,000. Most likely Bitcoin is going to give us a top somewhere at about 8,400 and then turn back down for several weeks. This is what I see on the charts. What do you guys see? I am interested in your comments. Let me know if I've missed something on the charts. Thanks and have a nice day.